I'm hoping our technology is working. I'm Beverly Guy Sheftal. I direct the Women's Center at Spelman College, where I have been teaching a very, very long time, actually 44 years. I am really delighted to moderate or facilitate this panel entitled From Artist to Activist, a New Haven Legend. And of course, that is Angela Bowen, whose extraordinary, enviable, bold, in-your-face, courageous life was captured on this film by her lifelong partner, Jennifer. And the only two people that I really wish were here with us this evening are, of course, Angela and Jennifer. You have seen Angela's life. You see a really good description of her on the program. So I'm not going to do what I had intended to do, was to just say a little bit about her. What we are going to do informally as a group of sisters is to reflect upon and talk about our connection with Angela. I'm going to just ask our four panelists to briefly introduce themselves. Shari Caldwell, Kate Russian, Angela Robinson, and LaShans briefly introduce themselves. And then we will have a conversation about Angela for about 45 or 50 minutes. And then we will open up the audience to dialogue about Angela. And the mics are here to the right and left, and you can just step right up and ask us your questions. So we want this to be informal. We want it to be fun and welcome. So, LaShans, you want to start?
Absolutely. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is LaShans. I do have a last name, but I'm known professionally as LaShans. I'm an actor and a singer. I work on Broadway and musicals. I do film and television as well. I'm a Tony Award and Emmy Award winning actor. Thank you. I am best known for starring on Broadway in The Color Purple, the role of Celie. And I also was in a movie, The Help, and a few other things that I've done. And I'm just so happy to be a part of this, having started my career as a very young girl under the tutelage of Angela Bowen.
Yeah.
Oh.
So my name is also Angela, and I am Angela Robinson. I am a Superior Court judge in the state of Connecticut. And so I come to this panel from a slightly different perspective, but for the same reason. Angela Bowen was my ballet teacher. She was one of my early mentors and certainly one of my inspirations. And I didn't realize it until I was watching the movie that she planted so many more seeds than just dance lessons. And so I don't think it is entirely a coincidence that I ended up going into the justice system and that I ended up doing it as the youngest Superior Court judge in the state of Connecticut because Angela inspired you to be bold and to think that you could do whatever it was you set your mind to do. And so I'm very honored to be here to reconnect with a fellow student who took dance class lessons with me and with a former teacher who still teaches. And I'm just honored to be here to celebrate the life of Angela Bowen.
Hello, I'm Sherry Caldwell, and as a young girl, I was introduced to Bowen Peters School of Dance, Dr. Bowen and Mr. Kenneth Ivan Peters here in New Haven, and dance has, at that time, it just took over my life, and I've literally never stopped dancing since, with the exception of having my daughter in 1989. So, and one of the things that I know is that what I feel for her and for what selfless contribution that she gave to us as young urban children at a time when people typically would not have exposed us to performance dance and performance arts. It still sits really deep in my soul, in my spirit, and I'm so grateful to her. And so I am committed to the communities, to the youth, to teaching dance and continuing the legacy of Bowen Peters School of Dance here in New Haven.
Hi, my name is Kate Russian. I am a poet and I teach. I teach poetry writing workshops and I teach African American lit with a focus on Black women writers. And I knew Angela during the Cambridge-Boston years when I was part of the New Words Bookstore Collective, which functioned as a sort of community center during the time of all the activity that you saw in the film. I also did radio with Jennifer. We were part of the 24-hour International Women's Day 24-hour broadcast out of MIT. I was also in a radio group with Jennifer called I Am Your Sister. And I must say that I was very moved by the film. This is my first time seeing the film, and I'm really glad that I am getting to see all parts of Angela's life, and also to meet people she touched.
So I want to just say that I met Angela later in her life, not when she was a dance teacher, but when she actually was beginning to be really out as a feminist activist. It was the early 80s, and three friends of mine and I founded a journal called Sage, a scholarly journal on Black women. This was 1983. And Angela called and said that she wanted to interview us. And so the first article that ever appeared about Sage, a scholarly journal on Black women, Angela actually wrote. She had an infectious personality. I didn't know Angela's early life. I didn't know Angela the dancer, Angela the cultural worker. All I knew was that this amazing, infectious African-American woman was calling, wanting to help us out. And through Angela's journey as a feminist activist, PhD student at Clark University, where I actually spent some early years when they were founding the PhD program, through her journey as a tenured faculty member, and after she retired, I stayed in contact with Jennifer. So I have stayed in contact with both Angela and Jennifer. So they have been a part of my life for a very, very long time. And I had some really powerful memories as I looked at this film. Jackie Alexander, whom you saw in the film, we ended up inviting to Spelman to teach women's studies. Barbara Smith has been a longtime comrade, so I was really, like Kate and probably the rest of you, very moved by the film, and it brought back a lot of memories that I had, I think, sort of forgotten. So that's my contact with Angela. I thought that maybe we could just start by thinking about maybe some really powerful memories that we have of Angela. Not just the impact, but maybe something funny or something that has stuck with us. So if I say Angela, what do you think of?
I'd like to start. I remember, I think I was maybe 12 years old. And like most young dancers who rather be out playing with their friends, my mother insisted that I study dance because she saw the talent. She saw that I could possibly have a career in the arts. So she insisted that I study dance. And we lived in Bridgeport, Connecticut. And I went to Harding High School. I had to just say that for the podcast. Anyway, and I would take the train from Bridgeport, Connecticut up to New Haven 4 times a week. And it put me sort of on the outside of the social circle, if you will, of the preteen years and the teen years, because I wasn't hanging out with the friends in my community. And so when I would get to class, because my parents made me go, while I loved being there, I wasn't always the best student. I would sometimes goof off or flirt with the cute boys that were there, because there were some really cute boys, right? And there were some cute boys. And so I wasn't always paying attention. And and dance is hard. Dance is physically challenging. And particularly ballet, which I wasn't the best at. I loved African dance, but when it came to ballet, I wasn't very flexible. My feet weren't as, it didn't point as easily, and so it was very physically challenging for me, and it would hurt. And it would hurt a lot. And I'll never forget one day, Angela, Dr. Peters, would say to me, well, I was complaining, and she had me in the front row, and then I just wasn't doing as well as she thought I should. So she said, okay, Rhonda, back then I was known as Rhonda, you get in the second row. And I thought, okay, fine. So she put me in the second row, and I still wasn't doing what the students in the second row, I wasn't doing my best. She put me in the third row. And then I was in the third row, and I was like, oh, well, this is better. This is more my speed. And I still wasn't keeping up with the third row. She put me in the last row. And while I didn't want to be there, I still had a healthy ego. And I didn't want to be in the last row. So at the end of the class, she came up to me and she said, you stay, I want to work on this movement with you. And I think it was an arabesque, and it was something about bringing my leg around and pointing around the jambe and pointing it. And it was so painful. It was so painful, and my leg was shaking, and I wanted to cry. And she just made me stand there and do it. And then at the end of it, I said, this hurts. This hurts me so bad. Why should I be in so much pain? And she said, pain will pass. She said, it's only pain, and it will pass. And for a 12-year-old girl, it didn't mean that much to me in that moment, but as a 53-year-old woman, I have taken that statement with me through my entire life. It's only pain, it will pass. And Angela Bowen gave me that at 12 years old. So.
Well, I first met her when I was 6. I do not know why. My mom might know. I wanted to be a dancer as long as I could remember. And I discovered that there was a ballet school that you could go to, and you had to be 6 to be able to enroll. And so when I was 6, I went. And I don't know if you remember, but she was a very stern and imposing teacher.
Yes.
And although she was loving and kind, she was very no-nonsense. And for a 6-year-old, she was quite intimidating. And so the first year went by, and I wasn't entirely sure that I had lived up to her expectations of what a 6-year-old should. I'd learned all the positions, the first, second positions. I'd learned all the parts. I'd messed up in the recital because when my group turned right, I turned left. And I was intimidated. And I remember when I went back that next fall for the next year, she embraced me and she hugged me and she said, Angela, you are a lovely dancer. And that was the kind of encouragement and acknowledgement that kept me there for another 7 years, and I probably would have stayed if I hadn't developed scoliosis and had to wear a back brace and stopped dancing, but that wasn't my path.
There's a memory of Dr. Bowen that's real prevalent, and I think it will always be, because she was such a dedicated and committed teacher that though she was teaching dance, and she was really a stickler for the commitment, and she wanted you to work hard. She wanted you to last long. She wouldn't put her hands on you to press you through things, but she would coach you through things so that you didn't pass your own natural ability or your natural limit. And I remember one day we were sitting on the floor. We were doing a floor stretch, and during floor stretch would be the time when she would pull out the blackboard. And she would pull out the blackboard and she would put the terminology on the board, and you had to recite it behind her. And she would set it back there again. And I remember she did that, and we were all saying passe, spell it P-A-S-S-E, you know. And then she stopped us, and she looked at one child who was sitting on the floor, and she was asking us to lift our spines while we pressed our knees down. And she told the girl to get up off the floor. And she recognized that there was something wrong with the girl, and she told her to go off and have a seat to the side. And she asked Mr. Peters to make a phone call to the little girl's parents. And I remember her stepping away from the class when the parents actually got there. And I mean, I felt like I was there for 16 hours a day. I just sat there after my class, before my class, watching the big kids. I mean, you guys, there are some of y'all in the audience now. And what she did was recognize that when you said scoliosis, it just all came right back to me that she stopped the little girl from going further into this stretch that could have damaged her, because she had a curvature of her spine that Mrs. Peters, at the time we called her Mrs. Peters, but Dr. Bowen could see it from the front. She was so clear about every individual on the floor in each and every class. And I think we had, at the peak, there was 460-something students at the school. And I mean, she literally knew each of us. And it turned out that when she instructed the little girl to leave the floor, it was so that the little girl could continue on and be as healthy as she could be, as opposed to going further into something that was really detrimental for her physically. And it was, all I could see was love. And from the same person whose eyes would get big like this, and she would lean forward in her chair. She would tell you know, but then she would give you this really loving, kind of a nurturing, you know, she was just always like another mother for us. She really was. When Tina said on the film that going to Bowen Peters it felt like family. That really was true. And I think we would be remiss not to include Mr. Pete at the time, too, because he was in there for the cause. But that was awesome.
When I think of Angela, Dr. Bowen, I think of determination. She's very determined, and she never turned back, and she never gave up. And I knew her later in her life, and I remember when she started back to college, and you know, she had a way of kind of looking over the tops of her glasses, and she was talking about her PhD studies, and she was talking about the fact that she needed to move through and finish and get this PhD. And one day she looked over the top of her glasses, and she kind of turned her head and she said, you know, I have to get this done. I don't have that much time. And I'll always remember that, and I think that her determination helped inspire me to go back to grad school, something I'd struggled with for years, something I'd been afraid of, and she really helped to encourage me to go back to grad school, along with Audre Lorde as well. And I think that, I know that Angela got a lot of encouragement from Audre Lorde and from the model that she presented to us.
You know, one of the things I think I will never forget is seeing Angela on these TV programs and and really acting up. I mean, in ways that are just wonderful. And so I think she gave some of us permission not to just be totally polite and civil when you're dealing with, you know, people who are asking you, you know, questions. And so I actually saw I don't know which program it was. I saw that interview with Angela, you know, where she's, you know, telling the person in the audience, you know, that you can't tell me that we can't have a day. And it has stayed with me. I mean, I don't think I've ever been quite as bold as Angela in those interviews, but I remember that she just sort of broke out of this little box that you're socialized to be in when you're in a panel on TV, that you can be yourself. And so those are some of my memories of Angela. What would you say was Angela's impact on your political self? You've talked about, you know, her legendary role in New Haven, but it also is clear that she probably impacted you as well, not just as her dance professor, but also your political identity.
Well, one of the struggles that I had as a girl was being a dark-skinned black girl growing up. And, you know, growing up in Connecticut, while it was very segregated growing up, particularly in Bridgeport, we were the first black family in our neighborhood, but we went to the school where it was 99% black children. But I still always had that dark-skinned girl stigma. It was just a part of my growing up. It was ingrained. It was just a part of the way that I identified as a girl. And but I happened to be, because of that, somewhat shy as a child. I wouldn't say shy, because shy may not be as descriptive, just not one to step out. I wasn't always first. I wouldn't be the first one to get out there. I was always sort of off by myself doing things. And going to the dancing school allowed me to express myself more individually, not as a part of a group, and not think of myself as that girl who may not have been the first one chosen, or the one who may not have been considered pretty, you know, back then. And I was able to just be the independent girl who was working on my own developmental issues. And seeing Ms. Peters, which is what we called her back then, seeing Ms. Peters and have this position of leadership and this power, there were no women in my life like her, who commanded so much authority, and but yet had the ability to make you feel so loved and nurtured. That dichotomy was just amazing to me, and I just saw her as this beautiful, spiritual guide that I didn't even know she was. I didn't even know she was impacting my life that way back then. But I look back now and see that she basically gave me permission to be beautiful. And as she took us as girls, as students, she would take us to New York. The very first time I went to New York City was with Miss Peters, and she took us down to open for Katherine Dunham's company. They were performing, and we went down, and it was the most amazing experience for me because it was Carnegie Hall, and while at the time I didn't understand how amazing Carnegie Hall was, I do now, but then it was just that I had this opportunity to be on stage in front of all of these people and to have my little solo moment. And I felt beautiful. I felt powerful. And it was because Ms. Peters gave me this permission to not only be this this dancer, she also gave me this permission to accept the fact that I was also beautiful. And I have to say that, you know, that was my first lesson, and it sort of switched it for me a little bit. I didn't think of myself that way. She empowered me to feel that I could be just as beautiful as anyone else. So that's how she impacted me politically.
Were you sharing with your parents what Angela's impact was, or Miss Peters' impact was?
They knew, my mother particularly, because I was always comparing things that she would say to things my mother would say. You know? And she would say, "I am your mother." Yeah. She would say certain things. You know, I would challenge my mother because she allowed me, she encouraged me to use my voice in a way that I had not used it at that point in my development. And you know, that's why to this day, when people ask me about women in my life who have impacted my development and put me on the path, I always start with her. Because not only was she this gorgeous figure of power and courage, she was also a beautiful black woman, and she happened to be dark-skinned. So that's how she impacted me, you know, politically.
Do you think you took any of that in your portrayal of Celie on Broadway?
I'm sure that all of it. I mean, we are every age we've ever been. So every bit of my adolescence and my 20s and 30s and 40s are all a part of who I brought with me to the role of Celie, definitely. It helped me to accept the pain as well as the joy, and to be comfortable with the pain as well as the joy. And I learned that very early. So it was only pain, it'll pass, it resonates with me. But also to not be afraid of the pain, to just go into it. And so as Celie, a lot of people, I'm often asked this question, how did you go so deeply into this woman who suffered so many atrocities in her life? And we all have different levels of atrocities that we suffer in our lives. Every single person, whether you're a child or an adult, you have something that you identify as painful. I just saw Celie as being someone who's courageous enough to live with her pain and still grow out of that and become someone that we see now as an icon in film and in characters that we read in novels, which is who Alice Walker brought to us. So, yes. That's my answer to that question.
I can completely understand why you would ask that question, because when you see the film, you see what a powerful figure Angela Bowen became. And yet, I think for many of us here, we were children and we were students, and so it wasn't as direct a contribution. I don't remember any specifically political moments, but what I do remember is exactly what you said. And that is that she told each of us we were beautiful and worthy, and I was always the smallest one. In the traditional dance world, that would have been beautiful, but in my community, I was the shrimp, I was the tiny one. And she encouraged me to shine in that. And as I look back, Mr. Peters was in a wheelchair. I mean, we were spending hours with a man who we revered and respected, who was disabled. And so we learned at a very young and unconscious level that every person has value. Every person has dignity. Every person contributes. If you were the feminine boy or the masculine boy, the dark-skinned girl or the light-skinned girl, or Treyer, who looks like she's Caucasian but is black. We all learned a lesson there, and that was a political lesson in its strongest form. I mean, you see how she lived it later in life, more literally, but we lived it hour after hour after hour. And there's so many of us in here who experience that and are empowered because of it.
I would have to say that I come from a family of very strong African American women. Women who were powerful and loving and nurturing, and they were stubborn, but they were, if you could convince them, they could change their mind and see another perspective. But they were, Dr. Bowen for me was another one of the women, like the women that I was reared under. What I did appreciate was the fact that she did not differentiate. She did not say that, if you were small and thin and long arms and long legs, then you could be the dancer. But in fact, I was short, and I might not have been as short as she was.
You were. No one was as short as you.
But I was short. Everything she tried to teach me that was ballet was difficult.
Yes.
I wanted to cry. I mean, I can remember being at the bar with a big grin on my face and tears coming down my eyes at the same time, because I wanted it. I wanted it, and she made me know that I could have it if I worked hard enough and if I stayed there. Now, the only way I would fail, what she said to me was, if I quit, if I stopped.
Right.
And I never stopped, and I didn't stop even after I'm still going. But the other thing I think that's really key and really important politically is I recognized without knowing that she had all these feelings of feminism and activism and what her sexual preference was. We didn't have a clue. Mm-hmm. These are parts of her life that happened after she left us. Mm-hmm. So what we knew was the dance, mm-hmm. was the fact that she came to us in this urban community where we had low income, we had middle income, we had high income. Everybody, you know, people from all kinds of levels of status, but we in that studio, we were the same. Mm-hmm. She taught us about as close to traditional African cultural music and dance mm-hmm. as was available in this country to African American people. Mm-hmm. She brought to us Chuck Davis and Babatunde Olatunji. I think Mr. Pete, Jay, I don't know if Jay's still here, but they used to call him Michael Olatunji at the time. But as we got older and I started traveling and dancing, he was actually Babatunde Olatunji. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, I don't think I did that. I don't think I did what I've done purposely. Maybe I did. But I think a lot of that comes from the fact that she taught me how to speak using the dance. Mm-hmm. And so using the dance, I tell the story of my people. I talk about the plight mm-hmm. that we have and we are confronted by year after year for however many years it's been now in this country and in other countries that you know, oppression is just not a good thing, and that everybody's equal, everybody's balanced. So I use what she's given me, both subliminally and outright. I tell the story of my people. I talk about what's wrong with the youth. I talk about what's wrong in an urban community that's broken down and not being addressed. It's just a way to speak to the things that I believe are wrong in the world and make folks understand my position. So I'm really grateful for that.
You know, I think that Angela Bowen's impact on me, her greatest impact on me, may actually come through seeing this film mm-hmm. today, which I'm seeing for the first time, mm-hmm. and being part of this panel. I knew about the Bowen Peters School, but I had no idea of the huge impact mm-hmm. That Angela Bowen had on so many people, and how her teaching has gone out through the power of her teaching has touched so many different mm-hmm. people, and it actually affected Broadway mm-hmm. and theater mm-hmm. in America. Mm-hmm. And it's really moving to me to learn that. So I'm going to continue to think about her and her influence and the role she has played. One thing that strikes me is she's not afraid to engage with people. Mm-hmm. She's not afraid to engage with anyone. Mm-hmm. And that's certainly something I want to think about and take forward from this point on as I do my own work. I did not know Angela really as a writer, which seems strange to me now because we never really discussed writing. But it's very inspiring to me now and very encouraging to me now that Angela has published her book mm-hmm. after this huge career, this multifaceted career.
Talk a little bit about the book.
The book is called Out of the Blue. It's published by Profile Productions, which is Jennifer Abbott's company, and it's called Out of the Blue, Alita's Stories. And it is a series of short stories that's based on Angela Bowen's growing up in the Roxbury, Boston, Massachusetts of the 40s and 50s. So that's the Jim Crow period. And Alita is a clear-eyed, outspoken, tough little girl who deals with all kinds of ups and downs as she figures out the people in her family, in her neighborhood. And the book is available online through Profile Productions.
I wrote a blurb for the book, and I'm convinced that Alita is Angela. I mean, Angela probably as she was as a little girl, and maybe a composite, maybe even has bits and pieces of the little girls that she encountered in the dance school. It's a very she's a spunky little girl. And reminds me a lot of the little girls that I grew up with as well. Not me, who at that point growing up was very shy, but I can remember the spunky little girls in the neighborhood, and Alita reminds me of her. The other thing I was going to ask you all is, I don't know if you maintained contact with Angela, after she left New Haven. Were there parts of the movie that you found surprising?
Oh, gosh.
Wow. Kate and I knew Angela in her later life.
She performed at La Scala. I had no idea. So what were your impressions of her, especially if you had not encountered Angela in a while?
I'm sorry. I was going to say that I really did lose contact with what was happening in her life and her career over those years. When I think of her, I still think of myself as very young and this beautiful, imposing teacher. But that watching the film, that she teaching in California, she still was teaching. She was still encouraging, and to me, it seemed sort of full circle to see her in that role, inspiring these young minds and encouraging them to these incredible futures, like she had done for me. And seeing that was it touched me, actually, to see her in that position after having become this powerful activist and speaking so broadly. I would have to say the television show was a little bit surprising to me, although I've seen that in class. I would not expect her to be so vocal, but of course she is who she is, and she's fearless. Fearless in the expression of herself. So I would have to say, coming full circle, seeing her in the leadership position as this scholar and encouraging these young minds was what impacted me the most about the film.
She's really authentic.
Yeah.
And that was the thing that came through. So I had contact with her after she had gone to Boston, and more after she'd gotten her PhD, because she came and visited with our family. So my family stayed in touch with her loosely through the years. So I kind of knew she'd become an academic, and I kind of knew she had a PhD in women's studies. I did not realize what an activist she was. That part was surprising. The TV shows were surprising, but what wasn't was that Angela Bowen Peters was truly authentic in each of her roles. Like she lived complete lives in each of her separate careers. Unto themselves, they would have been amazing. And yet she was really consistently authentic.
Yeah.
I knew that she was amazing as an instructor of dance, but I had never seen her perform before. So, so I went through all of the years at Bowen Peters, and then I continued to study various other places in the world. And then I came back to New Haven, and I had my daughter, And I taught in the school system, and I taught at Yale, and I've serviced various community organizations and so on. But it wasn't until I saw this film that I saw her actually dancing.
She's beautiful dancer.
She was an amazing dancer.
Yes.
Her lines were awesome. So, so that was a real joy and a pleasure to actually have some footage of her actually dancing. The other thing that was really, really surprising to me, and it probably shouldn't have been, but the fact that she did impact, regardless of what career she happened to be in at that time, the people that she touched they felt about her the same way we did.
Yes.
Those of us in Bowen Peters, we thought that she was ours, you know. That's our Mrs. Peters, you know. But when she went on and she moved into her second and third careers, the people, as they spoke on the film, you could see that they loved her the same way, that they were cared for the same way, that she wasn't, I mean, she's authentic. She really is not at all a phony person. She believes what she believes, and she will fight until what is wrong is right. And so those two things were really, really cool for me watching the film.
Yeah, I was really touched to see Jomo and Tombi as adults, because I knew them as children, and it was just wonderful. I'm glad they were part of the film. Something else that struck me was getting more of a sense of the life and career of Miss Elma Lewis as I was preparing for the panel. And I think that Miss Elma Lewis was born in 1921, and she was Angela's teacher. I learned that Miss Lewis was one of the first recipients of the MacArthur Genius Grant in '81. And she was Angela's teacher.
Right.
Now, Angela was your teacher. She was your teacher, and you're going to influence the young people who are sitting in the audience today. And the young people in the audience, you're going to do what you're going to do, and that's going to affect people into the 22nd century. And it's all through this line that Angela kept going and passing on the power and the knowledge and the encouragement.
You know, what I was thinking about, I've seen the film, you know, little bits and pieces, but never the entire film. And you can tell that this film was made over a decade. I mean, it must have been made over a 13 or 14 year
15
period.
years or so.
But if I had to describe this film, I would say that this film is a love story. You rarely see, I think, in terms of a black film, you rarely see the kind of love that Angela has for her community. So it's a love story in that sense. And it's also a love story in terms of, you can just see how deeply people love Angela.
Absolutely.
So the love that she received is also amazing. And then you see a love story between herself and her husband. And then you also see a love story in terms of Jennifer, who clearly wanted to capture this extraordinary person on film. And I can remember that this was not easy to do in terms of getting the resources together.
Sure.
So it is really a love story. And you can't help it at the end but just feel like, what a life. What a life this is. Love from her parents, love from her community, love from her students, and then love from from a husband and also a partner. And so that's at the end what I just kept thinking, that imagine what it would be if all human beings on the planet could experience the kind of love that you see in that film. So that was something that I at the end just felt really there's not a lot, especially recently in the news, that will make you feel good about the planet. But this left me feeling really, really, really moved.
There was something else that struck me about watching the film. That was that these issues that she spoke about, being a lesbian, leaving her husband, taking her children to go off to live away from their father at this time when Black women, no matter what you do not leave your husband. I don't care if you are a lesbian. I don't care. You keep that to yourself and you raise your children. You don't leave your husband. Black husbands are not easy to come by. And here you have one that is loving you to death and that wants to be with you and your children, and you're leaving him to go live with this white woman and you're taking your children. I mean, these are issues that were not easy to live with. They still aren't easy to live with today. I mean, as progressive as we are, a society, and how we all have now come to be a more loving and accepting community of people, there's a whole group of people that still see that as, not the proper way to live, particularly in the Black community. You just don't do that. And watching this film, seeing how Angela carried herself through these turbulent waters of society, and it seemed just right. The way she lived it and the way she expressed it, I have to say it has to do with the love she had for herself, the love she had for her community, and that love has to do with how, I don't care who you are, and I don't care what your political opinions are or what your beliefs are, you cannot watch this woman and not agree with her authenticity and how it is absolutely right that everyone should live authentically the way that they are born to live, and encourage others to be that way. And I found myself watching the film thinking, man, I don't know if I could have done that. I mean, I don't know if I could have left my husband and taken my children away from him and gone off to live with some other love. I don't know if I could have done that. The courage that it would take to do that in this society, and to still go on to live. And I'm sure it wasn't easy for her. I'm sure, although the world of academia can be, as you know, its own little world, but you still are living in that world, and people still will view you a certain way or label you a certain way. And the fact that she was able to navigate her life through all these many different lives and still become this icon that we are sitting here enjoying and celebrating her several different lives, it really left an impression on me. And something I want to share with my daughters that are 13 and 15 now, and they're struggling at that age. They're trying to find their own identity, and I'm left with seeing that and feeling very encouraged, and proud, honestly.
Yeah. Well, to follow up on what you're saying, LaShance, I was also struck by the fact that Angela was a star in Boston, a star in Roxbury, and she went away and came back with a totally different life. So I was struck by that as well. It's one thing to go away to New York to be yourself, or to go to Paris to live the life you want to live, or to go to the other coast. But I too was struck by the fact that she was coming back home to her own community in a totally new way 30 years ago.
Right. That's right. Takes a lot of courage.
Right. I will show this film, of course, to my students, but one of the things that I'm remembering, Alice Walker, who went to Spelman for 2 years and then left, and of course you have, she's had an impact on you. One of the things that I can remember when she came to Spelman one afternoon, students were, asking her all kinds of things, and they asked her what was the most difficult thing for her. And she says the most difficult thing is to be a free woman, free. They didn't really know what she was talking about. And what you see in this documentary is Angela is a free woman. It is extremely difficult. I would say it's even difficult for white women to be free. It's difficult for any women to be free. But for Angela to craft a life in which she is totally free, and by free I don't mean selfish or, only concerned about her own issues, but this is the portrait of someone who's free, who had to have made some very difficult decisions, and you could see it in the son and the daughter's face. And this has not been easy for them. I mean, they speak to it, and I'm sure they could have said more, and maybe did say more. But that had to have been difficult to take them, LaShawns, as you say, away from their father, and deposit them in a situation that was totally alien. And that is just really, really amazing.
Yes.
Really amazing.
I think it's also a credit to who she is that she would accept the kinds of people who would respect her the way Mr. Pete did and we did as her students and friends and co-workers. I think that the way he spoke in the film was, it made me have a peace because I know I loved Mrs. Peters and I loved Mr. Peters.
Right.
And so when they went in different directions, you tend to have in your mind, in the middle of the night, and you're just thinking about people and how sad somebody might be or whatever. But Mr. Peters was for her. He really wanted her to do what it was she needed to do for herself. And they both really, the contribution that they made to our community was selfless beyond belief. Because they didn't have anything. They didn't have money. They didn't have, where they could go and find a building and get high ceilings and marley floors and mounted bars and everything. I can remember Mr. Peters literally putting the paneling up on the board with a crutch on his wheelchair over here, and he's on a crutch and he's just banging on the nails into the panel. And they did this whole thing together, and to hear him speak the way he did was really, it just put a peace on my heart. The way I know that both he and she have said to me that they were friends and they were always going to be friends. And she still calls and makes sure that I'm all right. That's what he would say, that kind of thing. And to know Miss Jennifer was willing to, the way she compiled her information and put it down I thought that was just really nice. It was really cool. So I'm grateful for that as well.
Absolutely. It's interesting that if you talk to her students, I don't know how many of them knew about her new life or what she had done, but eventually we all kind of did, and it's all the same piece. I don't know how people perceived it individually, but it has all been just accepted, and you do tend to forget what you just pointed out. This was major. This was explosive. This could destroy most communities and families. And it didn't.
And it didn't.
The other thing I was thinking, because people have all kinds of, I'm thinking about my students between the ages of 18 and 22. People have all kinds of preconceptions, misconceptions, or no conceptions, but Angela says that she knew since she was a little girl that she didn't like boys. Because that's a question my students always ask. Well, where does this come from? But she knew that she was really not interested in boys, but she made a decision to enter into a heterosexual marriage because that's what you did. It had nothing to do with who you were attracted to. It had nothing to do with sexual orientation. It's just that there's a script There's a script that most folk got before, you know, the present time, and that's what she did, and she made the best of it. Amazingly, she made the best of it, and probably because she married the right person. So I think it's very helpful for young people to see that people make difficult choices that may or may not have anything to do with what their real desires and preferences are. And you see that with her. But she wanted a family. And of course, you know, when she made that decision, it would have been very hard to have a family under other sets of circumstances. And you recall that gay people couldn't even have foster children, couldn't really even adopt, you know, children. So my students will say, well, what does it mean when she said she couldn't have a family? They would not necessarily know that she would not have been able to have a family, you know, as an out lesbian person at that point. So there's a lot of history as well in the film. Yes. A lot of history in the film, a lot of political history, in addition to cultural history. So, are there any things that you might want to say to each other as a panel before we open it up for the audience?
It's good to see y'all. It's really good to see everybody.
It is.
And then there are many Bowen Peters people out in the audience that we haven't seen in a long time.
Unfortunately, we can't see too well up here.
Right.
So those of you who are in the audience who are Peters people, just
Bowen Peters.
Stand up. Wait. Stand up.
So we can see you.
Thanks for coming. Do any of you all want to say anything before we? Yeah, all right.
Go to the mic.
Get on the mic.
And everybody needs to get on the mic because they are recording.
You know, this film is being shown in New Haven, Connecticut, and so you know the people here got. We don't have that whole broad. A spectrum of her life. You know, we're concentrating on those 20 years that she spent here, and when she left. I myself, and I'm sure a lot of other people felt like she, you know, just ripped us out of her life. And we were very, very angry. So this film is the beginning of like a healing process because now I see what she did when she left. We didn't really know, we weren't sure. I felt certainly insulted and angry, like I said. So, you know, to see that she went on to another life and another purpose, because I just thought she just turned her back on us, kind of. I mean, you know, and, you know, that's kind of crazy to say as a mature adult, but it's true. That's how I felt. I felt abandoned and all those things. So we need to see this film. This is the beginning of a healing process with Dr. Bowen, not even knowing that she was a Dr. Bowen. Instead of a Miss Peters.
Thank you for that.
That's
Yeah.
Hi, my name's Alicia McGee Spearman. I was one of her dancers, and I just feel so just warm seeing her life. Like Angela and Sherry said, there's legions of dancers. If you're in New Haven, you talk about dance school, which dancer were you? Bowen Peters dancers. We still, at 50 years old, have pride that we're a Bowen Peters dancer. It meant something. It meant that you had a certain training and a certain work ethic, and that things had to be just right. And I picked my daughter's dance school. She had to go put money in the meter because her Caucasian teacher is kind of similar to Mrs. Peters. She doesn't play. So if you're gonna dance in her dance school, you have to work hard because she doesn't want you guys to look cute out there. Angela Peters, Mrs. Peters, wanted us to be professionals. At, like you said, Angela, 6, 7, 8, 9, you know? She did not care. Point your toe and flex. You had to know the difference. And I just think that, I know I saw her a couple years ago, my best friend Dory's here too, able to talk to her because I went to all women's college. And just to see, like today, she's such an intellect. I knew she was smart and tough, but I didn't know she was such an intellect and such an activist. And I really wish you could kind of see how many of us have gone to be, I'm a lawyer, people work at Yale, and her students have done great things because a lot of that subconscious, like, you can do anything. And just like you said, Sherry, sat on that stool, pulled forward. Pegues, why are you working so hard? Why are you working so hard? I mean, she would really get into it. And I just loved seeing this whole story of her life with Mr. Peters and the children and everything. So thank you all for whoever put it together. It was really just inspiring. And I hope you'll show it more because there's tons of, like I said, legions of dancers who are dancing or running schools and doing great things that would love to see her full life. Thank you.
I am so happy that I made it today. Growing up in New Haven, being a part of Bowen Peters was a big part of my life. And seeing the film took me down memory lane, and my heart is just full of joy. And she had a great impact then. In my heart and in my mind, I'm still a dancer. And I can still see her, and I feel it in my spirit. And she just opened up our world here in New Haven. And I am an activist, and I'm proud of the work that she's doing. And I'm proud that, she went on, and I'm not surprised by any of it. But I just had to say, whoever put this together, and all the people and all the pieces, kudos, and I hope that more people get to see it. I know that New Haven will probably see it through Sherry and others, but we need people to see her story. She was phenomenal. She had such a great impact. And in my heart, and as I continue to go on, I'm gonna continue to be that dancer, and I'll remember her forever.
Hi, my name is Diane Brown. I'm a librarian, and I'm a former Bowen Peters dancer. I attended Bowen Peters for 10, 11 years. And I want to thank Mary Lou Oleski. We were having lunch when we ran into Sherry Caldwell, and that's how this whole thing started. I want to thank Mary Lou and the Festival of Arts and Ideas for bringing this into a reality. I want to say, Sherry kind of said it, and maybe you didn't know that you said it. Carolyn said it in a different way, but the younger people who went to Bowen Peters, I think it may have been a little bit different. We were all special, not saying that, but those of us who are closer to 60 that attended Bowen Peters, when we were old enough to know that there was more going on than the younger group. So Sherry, you kind of said it, and maybe you know you said when she left us. And Carolyn talked about when she left us. Now, I'll tell you, when Mrs. Peters left us, it hurt. Because I came from that place that Sherry came from. When I wasn't at home with my strong black mother, I was at Bowen Peters School of Dance with Mrs. Peters and Mr. Peters. That was the mother and the father when you were away from home. So when Mrs. Peters left me, I had become a young teen mother. And I know the last time Mrs. Peters had saw me at that point, I felt as though not only did I let my biological mother down, I had let her down. So when I went through life thinking that, I shared this with Carol and Sherry both, I went through life for many years feeling as though I let her down. And while I was able to apologize to my biological mother, I thought that my fear would be I would die or Mrs. Peters would die before I was able to apologize to her for letting her down. But she did come back to New Haven on a few occasions, and Sherry and I were able to spend some very private moments with her. And it was it was different because now I was an adult, and I was able to talk to her about some things. But Sherry can tell you we still felt like the children. We were still afraid to say certain things. Mrs. Peters was talking a whole bunch of crap, and she was like real being tough. And everyone who knows me knows I cuss a lot, and I didn't cuss around Mrs. Peters because I was still afraid. I was still trying to be respectful, but very much an activist. Anyone that knows me, I'm very much an activist in New Haven. I don't back down from anybody. So I'm not surprised by anything Mrs. Peters does. She's that strong black woman. When she puts her mind to it, she's going to do it. She's going to knock down walls. She's going to do what she has to do. And she instilled that in me also. And I just want to say thank you to all of the people on the panel who came today to share her life. She was a hell of a woman. She's that phenomenal woman in the poem. She was a rock to me, and like I said, when she left, a lot of people were hurt, and like Carolyn said, some of us were confused. We didn't know what was going on. I had heard that Mrs. Peters had become lesbian, which didn't bother me personally. I went and told my mother when I found out that Mrs. Peters was lesbian. She said, well, it doesn't make any difference. She did what she was supposed to do when she was here in New Haven. And I just want to make it clear, we talked to Mrs. Peters here, if you remember, about her leaving New Haven, and she said New Haven just was not ready for me, and I needed to leave and go someplace where I would be safe. So I understand where that's coming from. You don't have to agree with it, but she gave so much of her life to us. It was now time for her to go and live her life. So I'm very happy for her. She's not very well right now. I do keep in touch with Jennifer, and let's just continue to pray for her. Thank you.
Well, thank you, everybody. The festival and all the panelists, especially those who have traveled far to get here. I'm Alita Staten. I have no idea whether I'm even remotely related to the Alita that's in that book. I do have the book and I've read it. But I wanted to clarify that I never attended Bowen Peters. I worked for Angela immediately under her at Bowen Peters during the short period of time when the school was about to close. And one of the things that impacted me during that part of our relationship was the difficulty, the simple difficulty that she had in maintaining a black arts organization in the middle of a city. And I saw that difficulty every day, trying to increase the enrollment and trying to still serve those of us who could not afford to attend, but she could not deny and would not deny.
That's right.
And every day, well, I don't know if we can keep this one, I don't know if we can keep that one. The day that Angela and I really became friends was the day that she fired me. She knew. She knew what she knew about, she knew how difficult it was. She knew that I was fresh out of school and was not, and I needed to work, but she knew it wasn't going to last that long. And so she did me a favor by sending me back. I was another one of those people that she told to get off the floor right now. But she also told me on the same day, in the same meeting, Alita, I know that we will work together again. She, in the same breath, gave me hope. She was such an example of leadership that I had the good fortune of watching every day, watching her run this magical organization that I grew up jealous of, and watching her fold it up neatly and put it away. And I know that a lot of people didn't know what was going on. I knew that it was going to go away. And I knew that I was part of the fallout. But she treated me so gently when it was time for the pieces to fall apart. I just am in awe of that woman, and I thank you for giving us room to appreciate her some more. Thank you.
May I say something about the feelings and the bad feelings that some of us may have had as children who were used to her being able to walk in those doors every day? I really need to be absolutely clear about the fact that one of the reasons why on that day that Diane, myself, and Mary Lou all met and we started talking about this, I really had a feeling that New Haven let them down, not the other way around so much. I really believe that after the selfless contribution that they made, they uprooted themselves. They didn't have any money. They had kids. They had, and they came to a place where nobody knew them, and they did this selfless thing for the masses, not for, their son died, and one word of need, and she put it away, and she helped, and she continued for 24 years right here in this small town. I really believe that we let her down more so than the other way around. I think that one of the other things that needs to happen is that we do include their story in the curriculums of the dance schools and the arts magnet schools and those kinds of things that are happening in the areas. We can't let the school the contribution die. We can't let the name Angela Bowen and Kenneth Ivan Peters die. Bowen Peters should be something that young, aspiring artists, specifically dancers, are taught about. We should not be satisfied with that story fading back. Or being placed on the back shelf again, because that's what happened. I taught at Betsy Ross Arts Magnet Middle School for 20 years, and I had people coming in to my classes because it was a public school, and they would come for dance. So I'm teaching dance, and the kids would come from all kinds of communities. They were coming from all of Greater New Haven. And they didn't have a clue about who Bowen Peters was, who Dr. Bowen was and Mr. Pete were. They didn't know. And to me, that was sad, especially when they're coming from every kind of dance school, because now, in the days when I was teaching, there were black dance schools, there were white dance schools, there were Asian dance schools, there were all kind of, now there's spiritual dance schools, there's all kinds of dance being offered. But these kids didn't have dance terminology. They didn't know, if I wasn't standing up demonstrating in front of them, they didn't have a clue of what I was talking about. But as a student under Angela Bowen, if she sat in the chair and taught the class, you better know what you were doing. And this is the caliber instruction that was given us when we were kids. It's not something that should be easily swept under the rug. It needs to be big and vibrant and in the forefront. They need to be talking about Bowen Peters the same way they talk about the Yale dancers or New Haven Ballet. You know what I mean? These are the Monterey. You know what I mean? We need to be recognizing and remembering. I mean, Larry Farrell went on and danced in Hello Dolly. He did Porgy and Bess. Lucretia Moy, her name in those days was Lucretia Moy. She's Lucretia Mack now. And her son is one of the prima dancers in the world. Classical ballet. Dark-skinned. I mean, looks like straight out of Senegal or somewhere. You know what I mean? But he is a beautiful, beautiful dancer who's being embraced today on a level where in those days, we would have never seen that. And so I just want to say, our pain probably doesn't even measure to hers. And so I know, for one, I'm committed to making sure that the film, her story, Bowen Peters, is in the curriculum at my dance school, and it should be in other facilities as well.
So we're open for Q&A. You know, I was reluctant to say this, but I think I need to say it after your comment. It is possible at this point to make contributions to
Yes.
the care of Angela Bowen.
Yes.
Angela requires a 24-hour round-the-clock care. And I would say that would be another way that we could say thank you. Not only do what you're talking about, but also write some checks. And it's very easy because you can go online. And so I want to just make an appeal to those of us in the audience. And I'm thinking about the Catherine Dunhams, who at the end of her life, you may remember, had no resources. And Harry Belafonte came to her rescue, as Harry Belafonte came to the rescue even of Coretta Scott King. So that's one of the things that we can do, those of us gathered in this room. We can respond to, no, you know, Jennifer's not asking this, Angela's not asking, but I think that we can do that. And we can make Jennifer's life, Jennifer and Angela's life a little bit more comfortable by making a contribution, and it's easy to do because you can just go online and do PayPal. So I want to just, will you, I know how to do it, but I don't know how to tell you to do it, but I think that we can.
I don't know how to do it.
www.jenniferabbod.com.
Okay, www.Jennifer
Abbott, A-B-O-D, two N's, Jennifer, A-B-O-D,
Yeah.
.com. And Jennifer is Profile Productions, and I would make clear too that Jennifer is the producer and director of the film that we just saw.
Right.
And the film is making its formal premiere this week at the Roxbury International Film Festival, and it's going to be shown at the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston this week. Yay. So we're special.
Yes.
We here in New Haven are actually getting a special sneak preview before the Roxbury International Film Festival.
So if anybody's inclined, and I'm inclined after seeing the film to go back and get online, and I'm sure that they would really appreciate it.
Yeah, you can purchase the film and the book.
Right.
Out of the Blue, Alita's story.
Right. And Jennifer still, you know, the cost of this film is, you know, documentaries are costly, and so she still is trying to, you know.
She's still fundraising.
She's still fundraising. So just keep that in mind as well. So I just thought I would make a plug for that kind of support as well.
I'd like to talk a little bit just quickly about the tribute. As I mentioned earlier, for 18 years we have been tributing and remembering Bowen Peters, Dr. Bowen, and Mr. Pete in a movement tribute. This year's movement tribute is this upcoming Saturday at Fairhaven Middle School. So any of you who are able to come out on Saturday, June 20th at 3 o'clock, we will be out at Fairhaven Middle School. That's 164 Grand Avenue. And there will be, the mayor will be there to give Dr. Bowen a proclamation for her contribution, and it will be received by her son Jomo. Yeah, so that will be happening. We also will be having reviving 2 of the old Bowen Peters dances. I won't say when. If you read the flyer, you'll get it. But
and now we is the Sherry Caldwell Dance Center.
The Caldwell Dance Center is what we're called. Yes.
I want to add, I'm trying to get Sherry to plug, so. At the dance school, after the tribute performance, Sherry's going to be showing the film again.
Yes.
Oh, great.
At her dance school. Sherry, all the information is out.
Yes. There's a flyer at the table outside the door. The first table to the left has a lot of information out there about Bowen Peters, about the Caldwell Dance Center, the flyer itself. I think a poster is out there, and then some black and white flyers that you can actually take.
Is there ticket information out there? I'm still plugging.
Ticket information is out there. You can sign our mailing list, and we can keep you in touch with what's going on as we move forward after Saturday. But the flyers do have all of the information on the Saturday's performance, and we really would appreciate you guys in the audience. Be a big help.
Yes.
I'd like to compliment the organizers of this event, but there's, Angela Peters, Dr. Bowen is here in my mind because of the issue of diversity. And I feel that you as panelists reflected so eloquently the diversity in Dr. Bowen's life. And I listened to your focus. You with Sage Magazine. I mean, oh, thank God. I didn't ever think I'd meet the Sage Magazine. I didn't think I'd ever meet such a woman as Dr. Bowen Peters. You with your poetry, engagement, I await your poems on engagement. You promised us that you would focus on it and reflect on it in the future. And my dear dancer, the heart of what we know in New Haven. Oh yes, the dance. Oh, she dances so beautifully. But it came from, as some of you talked about, generations across. And of course, I have love for my daughter, Angela. And I remember your question, what impact did she have? And I remembered when we learned that Angela had scoliosis and she was not going to be able to have the lead part the next year. And Angela Peters gave this message to me, and we, all of you here have embraced it. And that message was, she may not dance on stage, but she got from us a permanent, lifelong interest and appreciation for dance. And I thought about that as Angela reflected on being the little one who Bowen Peters, Dr. Bowen says, but you're a beautiful dancer. And you with your lovely tribute to rich, dark chocolate.
Yes, mama.
Angela Bowen was in our community.
Yes.
A woman who could do ballet, teach our children ballet, married to a drummer who was disabled. And she was, and I use this term, so ladies, if you have my color, remember it with pride. She was rich, dark chocolate.
Yes, she was.
Thank you for rising high in that path. And then I'll give you one last compliment, panelists. And that is, I don't know how it happened, but you all sound alike.
Wow, that's good for me.
You all sound alike. And I think that is the way that Angela Peters, Dr. Bowen, would have it. Even though she stood up in television and said, I will be what I will be, she still would want you today at the International Festival to say, to sound alike.
That is
just a perfect summary. So thank you all for coming. And
Can I just add one more
Yes.
thing? It has been such, on behalf of the International Festival of Arts and Ideas, I have to say what a privilege it is to get to know this story.
Yes.
And to share this story with a broader community who lives side by side but never heard this story.
Right.
And it is time that we start telling each other's stories. And for those of you who want to know a little bit about who helped put this panel together, Alex Ripp in the back, would you stand up, please? Alex Ripp is our ideas manager. She helped us put the logistics together. Please, ladies and gentlemen, let's keep sharing our stories. Thank you all very, very much.